Speech production look at the interaction of different vocal organs such as lips, tongue, and teeth to produce specific sound. Phonetics classification focus on classifying sound into categories found in what is called the International Phonetics Alphabet. It deals with the configuration of the vocal tract used to produce speech sound, the acoustic properties of speech sound, and the manner of combining sounds so as to make syllables, word, and sentence. Phonetics focus on the physical production of sound and focus on which vocal organ interact with each other and how close these vocal organs are in relation to each other. If the vocal cord vibrates, a voice is produced and any sound produced in this way is called a voice sound. What are the three types of phonetics? The three types of phonetics are production or articulatory, transmission or acoustic, and perception or auditive. Each type of phonetics studies a different aspect of the sound of language. Articulatory phonetics. The traditional method of describing speech sound is in terms of the movement of the vocal organ that produce them. The main structures that are important in the production of speech are the lungs and the respiratory system. The major division in speech sound is that between vowels and consonants. Most authorities would agree that a vowel is a sound that is produced without any major contraction in the vocal tract, so that there is a relatively free passage for the air.
Vowels traditionally have been specified in terms of the position of the highest point of the tongue and the position of the lips. The highest point of the tongue is in the front of the mouth for the vowels in hit, hat, and had.
Consonant. Some of the possible places of articulation are indicated by the arrows going from one of the lower articulators to one of the upper articulators. Not that the terms for the various places of articulation denote, but the portion of the lower articulators and the portion of the upper articulatory structures that are involved. This velar denote a sound in which the back of the tongue and the soft palate are involved, and the retroflex implies a sound involving the tip of the tongue and the back of the volar ridge. There are 6 basic manners of articulation that can be used at this place of articulation: stop, fricative, approximant, trill, tap, and lateral. Stops. This manner of articulation can be considered in terms of nasal and oral stops. If the soft palate is drawn so that air can still go out through the nose, there is said to be a nasal stop. Fricative. A fricative sound involves the close approximation of 2 articulators so that the airstream is partially obstructed and a turbulent airflow is produced. Examples are the initial sound in the word is tie, shake, and shy. Approximants. Approximants are produced when the articulator approaches another but does not make the vocal tract so narrow that a turbulent airstream results. The terms frictionless, continuum, semivowel, and glide are sometimes used for some of the sound made with this manner of articulation. Twirls. A twirl results when an articulator is held loosely fairly close to another articulator, so that it is set into vibration by the airstream. Taps. A tap is produced if one articulator is drawn against another, as when the loosely held tongue tip makes a single tap against the upper teeth of the alveolar ridge. Laterals. When the airstream is obstructed in the midline of oral tract and there is incomplete closure between one or both sides of the tongue and the roof of the mouth, the resulting sound is classified as a lateral.
Secondary articulations. When an approximant articulation occurs at the same time as another articulation is being made at a different place in the vocal tract, the approximant is said to form a secondary articulation. The states of the glottis, places of articulation and manners of articulation discussed above are sufficient to distinguish between the major contrasts among the consonants of English and many other languages. In addition to the contrast between the voiced and voiceless states of the glottis that occur during an articulation, there may be variations in the state of the glottis during the release of the articulation. Types of airstream. In English, all sounds are produced with an airstream caused by the expiration of the air from the lungs. This is known as a pulmonic airstream. Other mechanisms for producing an airstream also occur. This is the glottalic airstream mechanism. Amharic, the national language of Ethiopia, used this mechanism to produce both ejective stops and fricatives, which contrasts with the more usual stops and fricatives made with pulmonic airstream mechanisms. To summarize, a consonant may be described by reference to 7 factors. 1. State of the glottis. 2. Secondary articulation, if any. 3. Place of articulation. 4. Type of airstream. 5. Central or lateral articulation. 6. Valid closure, oral or nasal. And 7. Manner of articulation. Suprasegmentals. Many languages, for example, Finnish and Estonian, use lang distinctions so that they have long and short vowels. A slightly smaller number of languages, among them is Luganda and Japanese, also have long and short consonants. Thus, the vowel in cat before the voiced T is much longer than in cat before the voiceless T. In English, stress has a grammatical function distinguishing between nouns and verbs, such as an insult versus to insult. Variations in laryngeal activity can occur independently of stress changes. Pitch pattern is known as intonation. Pitch patterns that affect the meanings of individual words are known as tones and are common in many languages.
Acoustic phonetics. Speech sound consists of small variation in air pressure that can be sensed by the ear. Like other sounds, speech sounds can be divided into 2 major classes, those that have periodic waveforms and those that do not. From a listener's point of view, sound may be said to vary in pitch, loudness, and quality. The quality of a sound is determined by the small variations in air pressure that are superimposed on the major variations that recur at the fundamental frequency. Irrespective of the fundamental frequency that is determined by the rate of vibration of the vocal cords, the air in the vocal tract will resonate at these 3 or 4 opportune frequencies, as long as the position of the vocal organs remains the same. Vowel formants. Frequency of formants. The resonant frequencies of the vocal tract are known as the formants. Most people cannot hear the pitch of the individual formants in normal speech. It is quite easy to hear the falling pitch of the second formant when whispering the series of words hit, had, hot, help, could, would. Under such conditions, it is possible to hear the rise in pitch of the first formant during the first 4 of this word, and the fall in pitch during the last. Consonant formants. Voiced consonants such as nasals and laterals also have specific vocal tract shapes that are characterized by the frequencies of the formant. They differ from vowels in that in their production the vocal tract is not a single tone. They differ from vowels in that during a voice stops closure there is very little acoustic energy, and during the release phase of a stop and the entire articulation of a semi-vowel, the vocal tract shapes are changing comparatively rapidly. Other voiced consonants such as stops and approximants in gas semivowels are more like vowels in that they can be characterized in part by the resonant frequencies of their vocal tract shapes. The transitional movement can be specific acoustically in terms of the movements of the formant frequencies. Voiceless sounds do not have a periodic waveform with a well-defined fundamental frequency. In summary, speech sounds are fairly well defined by 9 acoustic factors, characterizing the vocal tract shape, formant frequencies, specific vowels, nasals, laterals, and the transitional movements in voice consonants.
Perception or auditive phonetics focuses on the relationship between the mind, auditory perception, and physical properties of sound. Auditive phonetics studies the relationship between speech stimuli and auditory organs as they influence the mind's understanding of the world around it. It investigates the process that refers to the perception of how humans speak. The beginning for this analysis of human speech is a study about our hearing system. That is the anatomy and physiology of our ear, brain, nerves, or even our entire body that are related to the hearing system. But as we know, our hearing system can react to all forms of action because it can only react to the sound wave. So we need to know what we feel or hearing for the situation, how we interpret and understand it, and also how we communicate back for it. This complex field is called speech perception. Is the applications. 1. For medical purposes, the auditory phonetics can be applied to the medical field because it can help the medical personnel itself to help you with the problem of your hearing, ear, nose, and throat. 2. Identity the phonetic symbol of a word in speech. 3. Understanding in the interlocutors as we communicate with them. 4. Aware of the call to ourselves. 5. As the media for our exam. 6. Warning sound to inform to make people realize and identify a certain condition. In the lexicon of a language, each word is represented in its underlying or basic form, which discounts all of the alternation in pronunciation that are predictable by phonological rules. For example, there are phonological rules that will account for the variations in the placement of stress and the alternation of vowel quality that occur in sets of words such as harmony, harmonic, harmonious, and melody, melodic, melodious. In stating phonological rule, it is necessary to refer to classes of phonemes. The plural forms of words of this kind are one syllable longer than the singular forms. The rules are more explanatory. However, if they show that these phonemes behave in a similar way because they form a natural class or set whose members are defined by a common property. Other phonological rules that refer to the natural classes of phonemes have already been mentioned. The rule concerning voiceless stops being aspirated in some circumstances and unaspirated in others refers to the subset of phonemes that are both voiceless sounds and stops. Each of the phonemes that appears in the lexicon of a language may be classified in terms of a set of phonetic properties or features. Phoneticians and linguists have been trying to develop a set of features that is sufficient to classify the phonemes in each of the languages of the world. A set of features of this kind will constitute the phonetic capabilities of man. In the earlier work on feature sets, emphasis was placed on the fact that features were the smallest discrete component of language. Not much attention was paid to their role in classifying phonemes into the natural classes required in phonological rules. Instead, they were considered to be the units to which a listener attends when listening to speech. Features were justified by reference to their role in distinguishing phonemes in minimal sets of words such as bill, pill, fill, mill, deal, seal, and kill. As a result of studying the phonemic contrast within a number of languages, Roman Jacobson, Gunnar Vanth, and Maurice Hale concluded in 1951 that segmental phonemes could be characterized in terms of 12 distinctive features. All of the features were binary, in the sense that a phoneme either had or did not have the phonetic attributes of the feature. Thus, phonemes could be classified as being consonantal or not, voiced or not, nasal or not, and so on. In 1968, Noam Chomsky and Maurice Hale stated that nearer 30 features are needed for a proper description of the phonetic and linguistic capabilities of man. In agreement with Jacobson, they claim that each feature functions as a binary opposition that can be given the value of plus or minus in classifying the phonemes in underlying forms.